during the pandemic, houses in this market and in many markets are flying off the shelves, if that's an appropriate analogy. We're seeing houses go far beyond asking price. We're seeing houses go more quickly than we had normally seen them go in previous years, particularly in Halifax, as we're all familiar with. And this boom might even encourage some folks, and I think has encouraged some folks to maybe capitalize some of their gains in other markets and move home to our wonderful province and increase our population and GDP. But sadly, it can also be prohibitively expensive for those of us who are buying our first home. So let's dive right in and get your questions answered. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions for our presenter in advance. And when we get to the Q&A, and you'll see two boxes at the bottom of your screen, or two areas at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A and a chat. Please include your questions in the Q&A. That way everyone can see them. It makes it a little bit easier. But you can certainly include things in chat as well. If you do include things in chat, I would encourage you to address them to panelists and all attendees so that everyone can see your question. Okay. Our presenter and guest speaker today is Roger Boutilier, who is the CEO of the Nova Scotia Association of Realtors, or NSAR. I spoiled their surprise already, Roger, by announcing what the acronym is. Roger is also a board member of the Halifax Chamber of Commerce. So thank you very much, Roger, and welcome, and thank you for joining us today. And I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Patrick, for the kind introduction. And yes, I am a proud board member of the Chamber of Commerce and want to express my thanks for letting us come on today and talk to you about the real estate industry in Nova Scotia. So I'm just going to share my screen here, and hopefully this will work out.
And I'm going to make myself go away, Roger, so that you're the focus of the attention there. Okay.
So can you see my screen, Patrick, now?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, great. We'll get started then. So thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning for a discussion on the real estate industry in Nova Scotia. So first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about NSAR before we get into the nuts and bolts of the industry itself. So we are a provincial organization. All realtors in Nova Scotia are a member of our association. We have 1,600 members who abide by a professional code of conduct and a strict code of ethics. NSAR represents all realtors in Nova Scotia, and we act as one voice for the province on education, on real estate. So we do provide education programs, training, advocacy, and we administer the MLS, or the multiple listing system, in Nova Scotia. Also, through an agreement with our regulator, the Nova Scotia Real Estate Commission, we provide the pre-licensing and the post-licensing courses for our members. NSAR also operates and uses 4 pillars as its lens to drive our focus of the association. And those 4 pillars are technology and tools, education, as I mentioned previously, advocacy, and information. So today's focus, our discussion, will be on 3 ways realtors and the real estate industry impact Nova Scotia. The first being quality of life, how realtors and real estate build better communities, and then finally, the impact that our industry has on our provincial economy. So first is the quality of life. It is the commitment of realtors across the country and in Nova Scotia to improve the quality of life, in our case here in Nova Scotia. We do this through advocating for property owners' rights, preserving our environment, and working with the government to provide affordable housing and housing opportunities. And also through our volunteer efforts, we help build better communities. A vibrant real estate industry also ensures economic vitality, which we will discuss later on in our presentation. Some of our advocacy efforts include, we have lobbied for and got in the provincial budget the down payment assistance program. We have been lobbying since 2015 for rural internet access, And now there is a plan in place to deliver high-speed internet throughout Nova Scotia through Develop Nova Scotia. Previous to this plan, we had a number of discussions with our members that they were losing deals in rural Nova Scotia because we had homeowners willing to buy and set up shop, and entrepreneurs, and once they found out there was no high-speed internet access, the deals fell through. We worked with the government on changes to the Residential Tenancy Act, making it more predictable for tenants and homeowners when a home is sold. And we are currently part of a working group that is studying the capped assessment program to offer a solution to a system that is broken. Federally, we have lobbied for and were successful in increasing the home buyers plan to $25,000. So that's a plan where you can borrow against your RRSPs up to a maximum of $25,000 and pay back that loan through your tax return over 15 years. And we also were successful in lobbying for a first-time home buyers incentive program. As an association, Nova Scotia, the NSAR supports Feed Nova Scotia as its charity of choice. And over the last 5 years, we have raised over $10,000 and thousands of kilograms worth of food, along with volunteering our time to work in their warehouse in Burnside. And I'm also very happy to say, and one of the things I'm most particularly proud of, in the last 9 years, NSAR has distributed over $85,000 in bursaries for students pursuing post-secondary education. There are also over 124 brokers. So Feed Nova Scotia is the association's charity of choice. Individual brokers, and there are 124 across the province, most, if not all, support a charity in their community, either through donations, volunteering their time, or both. So on the screen now is an example of some of the charities that we have supported in the past, or that the individual brokers have supported in the past. And quite honestly, personally, in my 30-odd years of working, I have never seen an industry that is so involved in giving back to their community. So in 2015, the One Nova Scotia report, or the Ivany report as better known as, was released. And NSAR took this to heart and adopted the play a part mantra to ensure we were doing our part in making Nova Scotia reach its full potential. As I mentioned before, we lobbied for the Residential Tenancy Act changes, the Down Payment Assistance Program, twinning of the 100 series highways, and rural internet access. NSAR also made a conscious effort to work with other stakeholders across the province to build better communities. On the screen are all of the most of the organizations that we have worked with since 2015 in one way or another. We have sponsored political debates federally, provincially, and municipally. We have partnered with economic development agencies such as the Cape Breton and Halifax partnerships to host events. And by working together for one cause, we all play a part in making Nova Scotia a better province. So how does NSAR and its realtor members impact the Nova Scotia economy? How do we exactly do that? So first is in 2019, the estimated spin-off spending of MLS sales in 2019 was $523.6 million. So what is spin-off spending? Well, typically when someone buys a home, they hire a moving company. They will do home renovations perhaps, probably buy new furniture or new appliances. Perhaps they'll do some renovations and probably do some landscaping as well. So that all is part and parcel of the spin-off spending. So in 2019, the estimated spin-off spending was $523.6 million. So per transaction, that equates to $46,714. And it also creates, in 2019, 4,428 jobs in Nova Scotia. So what does that mean big picture? Well, just in MLS sales, the spin-off spending generated 13.9% of Nova Scotia's GDP. So let that sink in there for a minute. MLS sales spin-off spending produced 13.9% of Nova Scotia's GDP. Definitely a major contributor to the Nova Scotian economy. But it doesn't stop there. The MLS sales also generated taxes for each level of government. For 2019, it generated $165.5 million. So $64.5 million in federal taxes, $71.2 million in provincial taxes, and $29.8 million in municipal taxes. So the governments are happy to see home transactions or home sales as well in the province of Nova Scotia. Stats Canada, when we incorporate not just MLS sales, but FSBOs or for sale by owners, and you factor in rental and leasing, actually real estate, rental and leasing, and for sale by owners actually contributed 15.47% of Nova Scotia's GDP. It's the #1 industry in Nova Scotia, ahead of tourism, ahead of government, and ahead of healthcare. Not a lot of people realize that real estate has such a dramatic impact on the economy in Nova Scotia. And here we have a breakdown by region of the spin-off spending in Nova Scotia. So obviously you can see that Halifax has the highest average sale price at $321.9 thousand, and spin-off spending is 63. In the province as a whole, the average sale price is $256,000 and just over $50,000 in spin-off spending in 2019. So currently, what are some of the statistics in the Halifax market? And I'm going to read those to you now. So right now, in Halifax Dartmouth, since we are doing a Halifax Chamber presentation, to date, this year in 2020, we have more sales year to date than in the last 9 years. We also, our listings are the lowest year to date to the end of September in the last 9 years. So our sales activity is up 4.5% year to date from 2019. To date, we've sold 5,546 units. Our average sale price is $360,280 in Halifax, which is up 12.7% from a year ago. Our average days on market, which Patrick alluded to, inventory flying off the shelves. Average day on market is 22 days compared to 36 days a year ago. And as I mentioned, our listings are down 6.9% from a year. And our year-to-date MLS sales equate to $1.998 billion. That's billion with a B. Oh, so skipped ahead, sorry. So I've been asked the question, and maybe I'm asking or answering a question before it comes out. What will the real estate market remain steady over the into the future? And I believe it will, perhaps not at the rate that it currently is transacting at, but I definitely think the real estate industry will be healthy going forward into the future. Nova Scotia historically doesn't have the peaks and valleys that other markets in Canada have. We're more of a, if you put it on a chart, it's more of a wave. And there's a number of reasons why I believe the current market will remain healthy into the coming years. And number one is interest rates. The interest rates are extraordinarily low right now, and because of that, there's more buyers in the market. And also the Bank of Canada has indicated that interest rates probably will not go up substantially for another 2 years. And also there is a possibility that interest rates will decline further. Also, the Nova Scotia Business Inc. Or NSBI, the Cape Breton Partnership, the Halifax Partnership, and the other regional economic networks are doing a really great job at promoting Nova Scotia as a place to work and live. And also the province is accepting of and wanting immigrants. And we all know that population growth is a positive for our province. And over the past 2 years, it's my belief that the province has adopted and fostered a culture of innovation and investment. So for those reasons, I think the real estate market will remain healthy going forward. So just in case you were wondering what millennials are thinking about home ownership, there's a lot of discussion about the millennial generation. This study was done by the Abacus group on behalf of CREA. So 86% of millennials want to own a home someday. However, down payment and affordability is becoming an issue, and we'll discuss that in a moment. 74% of the millennials think affordability should be addressed by the government, and 47% finds saving for a down payment has had an impact on affordability. This is why programs like the Down Payment Assistance Program, the Home Buyers Plan, and the Home Buyers Tax Credit are great ideas and ideas that we have lobbied for in the past. So why currently is real estate in Nova Scotia so active? And there are a number of factors for that. Nova Scotia's magnetism is drawing people in. In 2019, Halifax was the third fastest growing city in Canada with a growth rate of 2.3%. In 2019, we had 6,509 immigrants, international immigrants, come to the province, and 1,590 people moved to Halifax from other parts of Canada. Nova Scotia's population is at 976,000, which was a 1.2% growth rate in 2019, and we are closing in on that ever elusive 1 million person mark. International students are leading the growth of our student enrollment in Nova Scotia's post-secondary institutions. And all of these factors are great stimulants for the real estate industry. Nova Scotia is becoming known as the Silicon Valley of the North, along with Kitchener and Waterloo. And two prime examples that help retain our youth are Cove, which is the center of ocean venture entrepreneurship, and Volta Labs. And Nova Scotia is one of the most affordable places to live in Canada. And because of COVID-19, is currently known as one of the safest places in the world to live. Another truly important factor is the extraordinary low interest rates. Right now, you can get a 5-year fixed term at 1.92%. And as I mentioned earlier, rates are not predicted to go up significantly for the next 2 years. And the Bank of Canada has stated that there is a chance that the interest rates could go lower. Nova Scotia also has very low vacancy rates, causing rents to nudge upward. And this has become a deciding factor for some to stop renting and purchase a home and pay a mortgage rather than rent. As has been the case in the past, home ownership remains one of the fastest ways to grow individual wealth for Canadians and is for most an essential part of their retirement plan. And because of low interest rates and low vacancy rates, investors have entered the market looking for multi-unit properties or properties they can repurpose or retrofit space for housing. So just as an example of how a small organization such as NSAR can play a part, real estate notwithstanding, in the success of our province, we're just a small organization of 13 people. And we have hired a new graduate and master's student to fill maternity positions in the past. We have provided 9 students co-op positions over the last 7 years, sorry. And 5 of our 13 staff are under the age of 40. So we're doing our part to help retain our youth, which we all know someday they'll be in the market to buy real estate. So in closing, Nova Scotia is well positioned to be successful into the future. And we want to work with stakeholders, ensure we do not become a victim of our own success by ensuring housing remains affordable to all Nova Scotians. So in closing, I'd like to thank the Chamber for the opportunity to talk to you about how real estate plays a part in the Nova Scotia economy. And now I'm happy to answer any questions, Patrick, you might have or others might have.
Okay, well, real estate is one of my favorite topics, Roger. So I have lots of questions, but I would encourage people to go to the Q&A or the chat function if you have any questions. I'm gonna kick it off, and I'm gonna say something a little bit controversial. Not that I'm known to do that, Roger, but a little controversial, and that is. You just said, I think the average home price in Halifax is about $351,000. Clearly, there are some homes that are more, I guess to be the average, that would be the average, because I can't think of a lot that are less, but nonetheless, you know, $351,000. The average home price in Toronto is $951,000. So I guess I'm kind of hoping that you're going to tell me that, you know, being sort of affordable at $351,000 is something we should be proud of and something we should be trumpeting. And, you know, you mentioned the Halifax Partnership, you mentioned NSBI. Is this something we should be putting on billboards, you know, like in Toronto? I mean,
yeah.
you know, what do you think we should be doing to kind of get the word out there? Because there's still a lot of people that think that housing may be unaffordable, even in this time of low interest rates and, you know, that sort of thing.
No, that's an excellent question and an excellent point, and I'm glad you brought it up. I probably should have been in my presentation, so thank you for bringing that up. We have worked, I guess, NSAR joined the Halifax Partnership, I believe it was three and a half years ago. One of the first things we did in one of the meetings that we had with the Halifax Partnership was provide them the statistics as part of their Sell Halifax plan, where we said, if you compare Halifax, which is a great city, where you can go 45 minutes from a boardroom to a beach, to a park, to you know, wilderness, and take the price of housing in Halifax and compare that to Montreal, compare that to Toronto, compare that to Calgary, compare that to Vancouver, we are a great value. And they actually incorporated that into their Sell Halifax plan. So TL, I believe the acronym they use is Talent, Location, Cost, and Innovation. The cost actually came from us, NSAR, as part of the marketing, as part of their marketing strategy, because $356,000 average homes, homes in Halifax, now this includes all of HRM, range from 200,000 to, you know, millions of dollars. So it is an average, and there's a wide spectrum of housing inventory that is out there. So it's a good point. And what we are seeing, Patrick, is a lot of folks in Ontario and in British Columbia and somewhat Alberta as well, cashing out the equity in their home there, and they're getting, you know, million plus in some cases, and coming here and, you know, $400,000 buys you a really nice home in Nova Scotia, and then they're using the remaining equity as their retirement egg.
Right. Okay. I have a question here from Andy Fillmore. Thank you, Andy. Andy has said, I think we all agree the Nova Scotia assessment cap is a disincentive to first-time home buyers and to folks looking to move up to a larger, more expensive home. You had mentioned that, Roger, but is NSAR engaged in advocacy to abolish the cap? And in general, how do you feel that effort is going?
So we are part of, as I mentioned, part of a working group that is working on studying the cap. I think everyone knows this. The intent of the system was great when it was brought in. However, it's not working now. And it can be a disincentive for some folks to sell their home and move up. It's a political hot potato. I mean, it's going to take a lot of courage by the government of the day to change the cap system, because it's going to have impacts on everyone. So, for example, for those who don't know what the capped program is, you can have two houses on the same street, someone who's been living in their home for 25 years and someone who just moved into the property next to them, same house, same value, and the person that just moved in could be paying 3 times the amount of property tax the person that's been in their home for 25 years. So that doesn't work anymore. However, if you were to take the cap off, all of a sudden the person that was been living in their home for 25 years sees their tax bill triple. Well, obviously they're not going to be for removing the cap. So as I mentioned, we're part of a working group. The Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities is leading the effort there. We also have the Real Estate Lawyers in Nova Scotia and a number of other groups working with this. So we're not going to come with the government pointing out a problem they know that already exists. We're looking for a solution that's palatable for everyone. And it's not going to be an easy fix. It's like going to be like pushing a rock up a hill. It's going to take some time, and it's going to take a lot of research and investigation and number crunching to come up with a solution that's palatable for everyone.
Yeah.
Long answer to a complex, I guess, scenario there.
Yeah, and I'll give you my comment as well. And yes, I am one of those guys who lives next door to my neighbor. We bought a house in 2012. My neighbor's lived there for a long time. He has 1.5 times the size of the property that I have, and yet he pays less taxes because it's available. You can see it on the on the city website. So he pays less taxes. I guess I don't have a problem with that, but I suspect he can afford to pay the higher taxes. My mother-in-law lives in Ontario. I do her taxes for her every year. And the province of Ontario, you can put in your income and what your rent or your property taxes are, and you can be credited based on income, which, to be honest, is probably a much fairer way to allocate property taxes, or for the province to provide relief for those who need that relief, whether it's the elderly or whoever it may be. Anyway, that's my editorialization. But we support the removal of the cap as well, because it does distort to some extent property values, and often people are unaware of it, and they get that surprise after they buy the house.
Exactly.
When they move.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So another question for you: houses are often going for $50,000 to $100,000 over asking. What impact is this having on the housing market? What does this mean for first-time home buyers, given our salaries are not as competitive with Toronto? Therefore, housing prices are not always affordable to local Nova Scotians.
That's a good question. I think $50,000 to $100,000 over ask might be a tad bit high. I have heard 30 to 40, 10, that in that range there. However, yes, that is out there, but I think it might be part of the pricing strategy that sellers are using as well. It all comes down to value. If a buyer values a home at $20,000 over asking price, my argument would be the asking price wasn't properly, or as part of a marketing ploy, was put $20,000 below market to create a bidding war for the home, because we do know that inventory is at an all-time low right now. Listings is at an all-time low. So it all comes down to value. If someone's willing to pay $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 over the asking price, obviously they value intrinsically the property at that. No one's going to pay $100,000 or $10,000 over an ask price if they don't value the property. So I think yes, there's some truth to that the inventory is low and it is driving the prices up. However, it is also part of the marketing strategy for some sellers to create a bidding war for their property by pricing it lower than the value that it's actually at.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think you do need to be careful of that. As someone who I lived in Toronto for 20 years, so I saw the housing market in that market where there were often bidding wars and still are bidding wars. before we moved back home to Halifax. You've really got to be careful of that, because sometimes when you underprice a home in an effort to get a bidding war, sometimes you get what you ask for.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I was with a broker on the weekend, real estate broker, and the broker said his guidance to his agents is price the house where you think it should be. You know, don't try to create those artificial stimulants. And for this viewer, the anonymous attendee who asked the question, I would just mention, although this may surprise you, the average household income in Halifax is $67,000. The average household income in Toronto is $78,000. So that's according to StatsCan. So, you know, it may seem like salaries are much higher in Toronto. They're not. You know, we have many folks whose salaries are judged on a national perspective in Nova Scotia. So that would include provincial employees, that would include federal employees, that would include many of the major national employers. So just to help you understand that salaries aren't that much higher in Toronto than they are. But there may have been more value created in the market if people are selling there and coming here. They certainly may have more money to spend. So I'd encourage folks to again continue to ask questions. I'm gonna jump into some of my questions now, Roger. So
Sure.
are we in a seller's market or are we in a buyer's market at this point in Halifax?
It's a seller's market right now. I mean, I don't think that's going to come to as a surprise to anyone. Our inventory is like I say, it's the lowest it's been in 9 years. So when a house or a property comes on the market, it generates quite a bit of attention, especially on the peninsula of Halifax, where land is finite, finite. When a property comes on, it definitely generates interest. I think NSAR is working in the early stages, working with government to ensure that, one of the things that our provincial municipal affairs committee, or I guess our local government relations committee, not federal, one of the things we're wary of is we don't want to become victims of our own success here. We don't want to fall into the trap of Toronto and Vancouver, where housing becomes unaffordable for the average person. So we want to work with government to ensure that going forward, there is a plan in place to ensure that there is an inventory of affordable housing. And by affordable housing, I don't just mean low-income housing. I mean that the housing price in Nova Scotia doesn't balloon up to the average price being $900,000. We have to work with the developers to ensure that there is enough stock in a well-planned, thought-out way that the average home price stays affordable for all Nova Scotians.
I know you mentioned the RRSP withdrawal, I think, as a way for people to generate sort of that down payment, which they pay back over time. Are there other programs that whether it's the government offers or encourages to kind of encourage purchasing of the first-time home?
Sure. So as I mentioned, there is a provincial program called the Down Payment Assistance Program. I don't have all the details top of mind right off the top of my head here. However, that is for folks with median incomes. So if you have an income over $100,000, you probably won't qualify for that particular program. However, it does help with coming up with the down payment, and I believe it's a loan that is paid back over time and it's interest free, and that comes from the provincial government. There's also the home buyer's tax credit, first-time home buyer's tax credit. So the first time you buy a home, you can get a tax credit through the federal government. There is also the home buyer's tax program, and essentially what that is that the government will take an equity position in your home, and you can pay that back over time as well. So they'll assist you with the down payment, and they take an equity position in the home, and then you sort of buy them out over time as part of your payments towards the property. Home buyers plan, home buyer, and then there's a home buyer. I mentioned the home buyer's tax credit. So there are programs that that are available to homeowners as well.
Yeah, I just put up in the chat function, although I may have messed it up because it's two different links. I put up a link to the down payment assistance plan, which is the provincial plan, which frankly I'd never heard of before you mentioned it, so that's good to know. And actually, CUA has a plan called the No Down Payment Mortgage. And again, I don't know too much about that, but we actually partner with CUA quite a bit. So would encourage folks to look at that. I was before getting ready for this call. I actually looked up, and there's a number of banks provide kind of an affordability calculator, so you can determine, how much, what your family income or income is, and then what you may be able to afford for a home. So would encourage people to look at that. I was a little surprised because I put in a bunch of incomes, and I was a little surprised that given the way interest rates are right now, I mean, I priced, only because it kind of worked out that way, a $400,000 home, and it came out to $1,600 or $1,700, I think. Now, clearly, there's more expenses associated with a home, than just a mortgage payment. But how do realtors help people to, who may approach them, who say, I'd like to get a home, I don't know what I can afford, I don't know what to do, what should I do? What do realtors do to help them?
That's a great question. So one of the first things they'll probably do is obviously sit down with you and figure out, your what your wish list is, I guess, what you're looking for in a home. When it comes to, what you can afford, there, like you had mentioned, there's a number of excellent tools that are out there. One of them is a tool that actually CMHC provides. It's on their website, and it essentially is, and again, off the top of my head, I don't remember what exactly it's called, but it is right there on their homepage, that will help you out with what you can afford for a mortgage. So you put in your income, the interest rate that you pay. Basically, it's a mortgage calculator, but it also takes into account your debt to service ratio and that sort of thing. So that is one of the things. And realtors also are very familiar with the mortgage calculators as well, and what goes into, because when you buy a home, there's more than just a down payment. There's the deed transfer tax, which in Halifax is 1.5% of the purchase price, which comes as a surprise to most buyers. There's going to be the legal fees, the closing costs. So you're not just going to have to come up with your down payment. You're going to have to come up with a bunch of other funds to cover the closing costs. So your realtor should cover that off with you as well. And again, make sure that your debt ratio, I believe housing cannot be more than 35% of your expenses. That's the rule of thumb to use. So they'll work with you on that to make sure that once you have the closing costs covered, that your mortgage cost comes in under that, and they'll factor in heat and all the property taxes, everything that goes into running a home.
Right. Another question for you. On the list of issues you're working with government on, and there is obviously a long list, how important is affordable housing? You've already talked about it a little bit, but how important is affordable housing, and what steps are being taken to look after housing for the disadvantaged or those being displaced by gentrification?
Another great question, and thank you for that. Coincidentally, NSAR has sponsored the Meet Your Candidates forum with the Chamber of Commerce. So I believe, Patrick, we had all the districts on over the past month or so, and it became very clear to us that affordable housing is definitely a platform for this particular municipal election. As a question came up in each of the districts on affordable housing. So it's definitely something that is coming to the forefront. And as I mentioned earlier, we are well aware we do not want to be a victim of our own success here in Nova Scotia. Even pre-COVID, real estate was heating up. So, and it's become even more so since. So we want to make sure that we do work with government, developers, the Home Builders Association of Nova Scotia, to ensure that affordable housing is part and parcel of any development that takes place, and that there is an adequate supply of affordable housing for folks moving forward.
Right.
So we're
Yeah.
we don't have any particular plan in place right now, but it is on our radar. And after the municipal election, we'll be reaching out, to the newly elected politicians to make sure it's part of their plan and work with them to ensure that going forward there is a plan in place for that.
Yeah, I would say, having hosted a number of those webinars with the candidates, it was probably the number one issue.
Exactly.
Particularly when you looked at areas like downtown Dartmouth, downtown Halifax, or even just outside of those areas. It was much more a topic of conversation,
Exactly.
and an important one, really. The city is talking about density, but right now there doesn't seem to be a lot of building of condos and that sort of thing. Actually, I guess that kind of leads me to a question. Which is, there does seem to be rental accommodation being built by developers right now. Do you think there's a reason they're not building condos, or what do you think it is, which real estate agents could then sell?
I'm sorry, did you say there doesn't seem to be
Well,
condos
there
being built, or
does not seem
does?
to be building of condos. There's building of rental accommodation by developers primarily. So we see a lot of apartment buildings going up, but it's mostly rentals. Is there a reason they're not building condos? Where we see in a market like Toronto or Vancouver, lots of condos being built.
Well, I think it goes in cycles. I know the last 3 or 4 years there was quite an influx of condos being built downtown, especially along the waterfront, downtown Halifax, I mean, and downtown Dartmouth as well. But you're right, there are a lot of rental units going up, and I think that has something to do with the demographics of Nova Scotia. We have probably, if we don't have the oldest population in Canada, we're darn close to it on an average. And I think a lot of seniors, and I know I'm getting to that age where I no longer want to shovel a driveway or mow a lawn or do landscaping, that sort of thing. So you would cash out the equity that you have in your home and rent, because it's basically turnkey. With condos, you have fees as well. And like I said, we did see quite an influx of condo developments over the past few years. And I think, every type of development takes its turn. And right now, as I mentioned, there are extremely low vacancy rates in Halifax. I think it's under 1%. So there's obviously a demand for rentals, and the developers see that, and they see that that's an opportunity for them to build a multi-unit complex and have it rented out.
Yeah. If we go back to the spring, sort of the height of COVID in this market, it's not certainly no community spread in Nova Scotia right now, but if we look at the spring of March and April and May, obviously the market was impacted. I don't think there were as many listings at that time, but I was surprised to hear you say, I think we're kind of on track for approximately the same number of listings as last year. But I've heard people say there's not as much inventory. So is there inventory or isn't there inventory?
No, our listings are down. We haven't had this few listings in 9 years. No, our listings are definitely down.
Oh, okay. And why do you think that's COVID? Do you think people are just not listing as much because of COVID?
I don't have an answer to that. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, why listings would be down. I know that there needs to be more development. Our population is growing, which is a good thing. So yeah, I don't know why listings would be down. I think COVID may play a part in it, but also, if you list your home, you also have to be ready to buy a home or move. So I think that plays a part in it as well. And also, the market is active. So when a listing does come on, it usually moves. So that keeps the inventory down as well. The days on market are at 22, which is extraordinarily low. Like if you go back through the past few years, typically days on market were 60 plus, and we're a third of that right now. So that keeps the inventory low as well. So even though our listings are down, that just means they're not staying in inventory as long as they typically might in the past. So I think that would be the number one reason why listings are down. They're down, but that doesn't mean there's not listings. If you know what I'm saying, they're coming on the market and coming off just as soon.
Right. You mentioned that housing prices are up. I think you only said about 4%. Is that what you said?
Just give me 1 second and I'll get my
Well,
notes.
while you're looking, I'll kind of get to my question, which is, I would have expected, based on what I'm hearing people say, that, that the market was up 20% or 30%. But I think what I'm hearing you say is that it's not up, sort of that 20 or 30% in Halifax, as much as, maybe sellers want us to believe that we should all jump in and buy their home.
No. So for Halifax, Dartmouth, sales activity is up 4.5% year to date from 2019. So this year so far, we've sold 5,546 units through the MLS system. And the average price in Halifax is up 12.7% from a year ago.
Wow. Okay. So 12%.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a pretty big increase. That must be greater than many of the markets across the country.
Halifax has been identified as one of the better markets. You're correct in Canada.
Okay. Another question. The generation of older Nova Scotians, and I think we do have the oldest population in the country, selling their houses and moving into apartments are driving up prices as they're able to afford current high apartment prices. Do you think that's affecting the ability of millennials to afford those apartments? I guess it's a supply and demand question, right?
Yeah, it comes down to basic economic supply and demand. I think going back to your previous question, that's why you're seeing so many developers develop rental properties, because there's definitely a demand for it right now.
Yeah.
We all know that, and it comes as no surprise that rent is actually nudging up because there is very low vacancy rates right now. Yeah. So once more supply comes on the market, that should slow down and maybe even drop rents a little bit, because basically a 1% or below 1% vacancy rate is unheard of.
Right. So what advice would you give a first-time home buyer in Halifax?
Do your homework. There's a plethora of tools out there. We all know the World Wide Web, the internet has tons of information on it. But the number one piece of advice that I would give a first-time home buyer is work with a realtor. Do your homework, do your research on realtors, find one that you're comfortable with, because they want to work with you. The realtor wants to work with you. The number one reason realtors get into the industry, and I've heard this from many of them, is they get a great deal of satisfaction knowing that they put someone in the home that they want, someone in, not just in a house, but in their home. So they want to work with you. They're the experts in the industry. They know the bylaws of the communities. They know where the schools are. They know where the shopping or the grocery stores are. They know where the gyms and the healthcare facilities are. They'll be able to guide you in the right direction and get you into a home that you can afford, that you're going to like, that you're going to fit into the community. That would be my number one piece of advice. They'll provide you with all the tools that you need to make sure that you're not overextended on your home, so you don't become host poor. They are the trusted guides, and they will work with you and to negotiate on your behalf with the seller. So yeah, my number one piece of advice would be to work with a realtor, and
yeah, I mean, having moved around a lot myself, I will say realtors do a lot of work, and at the end they only get paid if you buy or sell your
exactly.
That's
I guess
it's kind of
that's the number one thing. I think they're only successful if you're successful, and that goes for both the buy and sell side of things. If they list your home, they don't get paid unless your home sells. And on the flip side of that, if they're representing you as a buyer, they don't get paid unless you buy a home. And you're under no obligation whatsoever to to buy a home, right? And
Yeah.
on the sell side, I mean, they're working in your best interests. And there are so many factors that go into buying and selling a home. It's just ridiculous the amount of legislation that's involved, the amount of paperwork that's involved, and they are trained professionals in that regard. They will do your negotiating for you. They'll make sure the paperwork is filled out, your deed transfer. There's so much that they do behind the scenes, the marketing plan. It's just unreal. So there's definitely a lot of value in working with the realtor.
Right. I see Paige put up a link to the first-time home buyers incentive as well from CMHC in the chat.
Thank you, Paige.
I encourage people to look at that. I've heard anecdotally that there are a lot of people from Ontario or other markets moving back home to Nova Scotia. Are you hearing that, or do you have any stats that show that?
Patrick, I wish I did. And I'm hoping in a year from now, I will be able to give you those statistics. We don't track where buyers come from right now. However, we are working with our national body on creating a tool that will show us where buyers are coming from going forward. But yes, anecdotally, we have heard from all of our members in all regions of Nova Scotia, so from Cape Breton to Yarmouth, that they are seeing a lot of Ontarians, a lot of people from British Columbia, and some Albertans, not like I said, mentioned earlier, cashing out the equity in their homes there and moving to Nova Scotia to retire because they're able to buy the same value home, a lot less. I guess I don't want to say cheaper, but for a lot less than what they would in their home province, and use the equity as their retirement.
Right. Yeah. Well, yes. As I say, I was talking to a broker on the weekend, and he said that he had heard that there were 30 homes that sold in Shelburne in the month of September, which I suspect there are not usually 30 homes that sell in Shelburne in any month, no matter what the month is. So
no, you're correct. On the South Shore, Shelburne, Liverpool, those areas are seeing activity, more activity than they would have seen in the past. I mean, Nova Scotia is a beautiful province. We have tons of shoreline, tons of ocean frontage. We have great quality of life here. You know, it's just we're not the best kept secret anymore. And I think the great job that NSBI, the Halifax Partnership, and our other regional economic networks are doing in selling the province, we're starting to see the fruition of their efforts. Like, we're not the best kept secret anymore.
yeah. Another question: if the kind of in the future, if housing prices drop, the loans you've taken out to get into this hot market may be greater than the increased value of the home. When, you know, in Calgary in the 80s or 2008, housing prices dropped. I mean, is that a worry? Is that a concern people should have? I have my own opinion, so I want to answer after you.
I don't think so, and here's why. In 2011 to 2015, real estate was in a slump in Nova Scotia, yet the average home price increased by 1 to 2%. It defied all laws of economics. There was a plethora of inventory at that time. Days on market were well over 100, yet the average home sales price still went up 1 to 2%. And as I mentioned earlier, Nova Scotia historically doesn't have the peaks and valleys of the other major markets. And there's a reason for that. We have a pretty diversified economy in Nova Scotia, in that there are a lot of government jobs. We have a naval base here. We have lots of universities. All those industries provide jobs. And also, going forward, as I mentioned, we have created a culture of innovation and investment. We're seeing a lot of companies set up shop here in Halifax and across the province. And we can attribute that to the great work the Halifax Partnership has done and the great work that NSBI has done. So no, I don't see housing prices plummeting. We don't have the peaks in value peaks and valleys, sorry, that Toronto or Calgary or Vancouver have. Calgary is known as a boom and bust town because they rely solely on oil and gas. There's not one industry that we rely solely on. So I think we're somewhat sheltered that way.
Yeah, and I would add to that. I mean, I've moved around a lot in my career, and I think what I would say is don't buy a house you can't afford. First, buy a house you can afford, and second, over the long term, so far I have yet to find a better investment than real estate.
Yeah.
Because I don't know who said they're not making any more land, but it was probably a very true statement. So if you can buy something that you can afford now, even if there is a decline in the short term, and I don't know that there will be, because although one could argue that the Halifax market is up significantly, when you look at some of these other markets, it's still really undervalued.
Exactly.
Again, people may disagree with that, but it's still undervalued, and if folks are going to come from those other markets, prices will likely continue to increase. They may not continue to increase at 12% a year.
No.
But they'll likely continue to increase. So it's still a pretty good, pretty safe long-term investment. But if
real estate is still the number one investment for Canadians to build long-term wealth.
Right.
It is essentially, the number one way for the average Canadian to build wealth, and it will become part of your retirement plan. I mean, it's tried and true.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, thank you, Roger. I think we're almost out of time, so I'm gonna stop us here. And thank you very much for that. Thank you, Roger. I want to remind everybody that next week is Small Business Week. So that's an important week. Not that every week at the Halifax Chamber of Commerce isn't Small Business Week, but next week is an extra special week. We have a number of events happening next week, as well as a webinar with BBC on how entrepreneurs are adapting to the pandemic next Friday. So I would encourage you to attend that. I believe that's with the president of BBC Canada as well. So that would be great if you could attend. There's a number of other events, so please keep an eye out. This webinar was recorded and will be available to all attendees shortly on YouTube, and you'll likely get an email to let you know that you can take a look at that again. So thank you very much to all of our viewers today, and thank you very much, Roger, for this insightful look into Halifax and Greater Nova Scotia real estate, and thanks to NSAR for the sponsorship of our candidate seminar.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. Very much appreciated, and always happy to talk to the chamber members.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Roger, and we'll see you later. Thank you. Thank you all. Bye-bye.